Good evening and welcome to the Whiskey Wednesday edition. Coming to you live, our returning special co-host Ravi and the ninja, Dr. Jason Pittman. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about imposter syndrome. Is it good? Is it bad? What is even the definition? I'm your host, Dr. Dan Ford, and this is EchelonOrchid.
Guess who's back?
Gentlemen, cheers to Whiskey Wednesday. I don't know what y'all are drinking, but I'm drinking a
rabbit hole. I finished it.
Oh, you finished it. Well, maybe that's because you had your director of communications listening in tonight. I don't know.
Oh, no pressure.
Hey,
definitely no pressure.
What month are we in?
This is September.
Prost.
Cheers. Prost.
Nastarovia.
Oh man, you gotta say it.
So Jason and I have spoken, tangentially about imposter syndrome, but I really wanted to focus quite a bit on, and more in depth a little bit about it, because I don't know that many people necessarily understand what it is. So I'll just start it off with the definition from, Google, because basically anything Google, I believe. So it's the persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. Wow. And so to me, it's basically kind of going, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. Even though I have done all of these things that would say, yeah, I deserve and have earned a seat at the table.
Yeah, speaking for myself, I would encapsulate that. You tell me if you agree or disagree with this, that imposter syndrome is largely construed as I'm a fraud. I don't belong where I'm at.
Yeah.
I've not achieved what I've achieved based on merit. I've achieved it through some deception, willfully or unwillfully. I'll add to this, because at least my perspective is that this is not an official DSM diagnosis, right? Mm-hmm. Imposter syndrome is not a manifestation of a pathology.
Well, I mean, it is technically considered a psychological disorder, but you've got to be diagnosed with it. I don't know that I'd go so far as to say that I personally would think that I would represent the psychological disorder. But I mean, I might. I don't know.
Not the one I would pick for you, dude.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of them around. But this is what I felt that was somewhat interesting is the people that are somewhat, we'll just say, famous, that self-proclaim that they are also suffer from imposter syndrome. Sheryl Sandberg.
Wow.
David Bowie. An interesting one to me, which is very, I don't understand why she would think this, but Serena Williams, she's won how many Wimbledons?
Gotta be kidding me.
Yep. She says, now maybe it's because she was the younger sister and Venus was winning all these things before her. I don't know, but she self-proclaims. Howard Schultz, who was the CEO at Starbucks. Tina Fey.
Wow, that's quite
Maya Angelou.
Oh my God.
Ariana Huffington, Lady Gaga, Natalie Portman. I don't understand. This one also is very baffling to me. And I always brutalize her last name, so one of you can correct me. But Sonia Sotomayor, the Supreme Court Justice, she says she suffers from imposter syndrome. And then, Tom Hanks. Those are some famous people that say, nope, I don't know that I deserve a seat at the table.
So let me ask you two a question based on that list and the idea of how this manifests, right? Do you think people that aren't on that list, let's take the three of us, for instance, or those that are even less famous than us, because if nothing else, we have this show, right? I mean, so that affords us a degree of fame that other people don't have. However you construe that, it's true.
I will have you know that you could Google me before this show, and I still showed up quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. Do you think people of zero notoriety manifest imposter syndrome, or does imposter syndrome only manifest in people of notoriety? It's an honest question. I don't know. I'm curious about that.
I don't think it has anything to do with notoriety. I think that there's an underlying insecurity that is manifest in people, and Dan and I were chatting about it earlier, that I think that if you learn and you experience and you gain some proficiency and you pursue education and you realize that no matter how much you learn, there's going to be this infinity of knowledge. And I work in an industry where the longer you work, the more you realize how little you know. I work in construction. So like there is no such thing as knowing construction, right? It's just that it's just learning every day, and you're always learning, and you realize there's a humility that goes with that. Like you can get humbled very easily on construction projects. You can think that, oh, I had a successful day or a successful month or a successful project, but then you realize that there's an old saying in construction, you're only as good as your last project or your last screw up. And so there's a certain insecurity that goes with that, maybe. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, I think you're kind of onto something, because I don't believe you have to be famous or well-known. I kind of break people down in this aspect as there are people that are talented and never live up to their potential. And so they don't suffer from imposter syndrome. They just kind of believe it's going to work out, and I'm going to benefit. There are people that are perfectly okay with saying, I'm content, so they don't suffer from it. There are people that believe they're the underdog and therefore work hard. And then there's the people that they believe that they're the underdog and that they don't deserve to be in the same room. Therefore, they work even harder. And I actually think if we were to ask Michael Jordan this was the reason why he worked so hard that sophomore year of high school after he got cut. Right. He never wanted, and Kobe Bryant has said it, I'm never going to allow you to outwork me. The person that says that believes that I'm only on the top because no one else has noticed that this other person is better. So I'm going to keep working so they never notice it. And that could be a high school teacher. It could be, any teacher for that matter. It's just the personality of, to me, I don't think it's a bad thing. Like I believe I suffer from it. And I think it's what keeps me always wanting to be better tomorrow than I was yesterday.
You're grounded, right? You get grounded in a certain way.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Well, that thing.
I think so. The list is largely bullshit, right? Because it only points to people of notoriety that we can somehow aspire to be, which robs us of our agency, of our own notoriety, as I would argue it. I think what creates this sense, at least as I can,
sorry to interrupt you, Ninja,
no,
but I think this could be a good research study for us to be able to do and then publish. And we take a look at people that are not in, say, the C-suite of organizations and find out. We are qualified.
Well, we are doctors. Well, it's interesting because
really smart. But Ravi's really smart.
Ravi talks about construction and the dynamicism of that environment. And I would draw parallels to cyber, which is a highly dynamic environment. And this is the point I would submit to us to consider, is that it's not the level of notoriety that engenders a sense of imposter. It is an exposure over time to chaos. And so psychologically, you would construe this as the domain of proximal development.
You nailed it. You nailed it, because construction and managing projects is really about managing chaos. On a good day, you might manage it just well enough, but at some point that chaos is going to get you. And you realize that, and that's an angst that you have to deal with.
That's right. Well, you know, if you accept that call to action in mythological terms, you know, Dan and I have talked about archetypes and Jungian psychology a bit, and this isn't my field of study, although it's a hobby of mine. Mythologically, there's a certain amount of times you can go approach that dragon before it eats you, and that dragon represents chaos.
Or I become the dragon.
Well, yeah, right, exactly. But that's why we bear the tattoos that we do, because we're manifesting that externally. And so in this zone of proximal development, if you're interested in furthering yourself as a human being, you have to withstand a measure of that so you can grow. You can't grow when you're content or safe.
Correct.
Right? You have to get exposed to that chaos or that dynamicism so that you can butt up against conflict and grow as a consequence of it.
If you don't overcome any kind of adversity, you never really grow, right?
That's right. That's right.
You need adversity.
The easiest thing in the world is to never try.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and you never grow if you don't try.
If you think about our concept of failure, so failure, there's a great saying that's out there. You know, I mean, we've seen it. Failure and success are both imposters. I don't know who said it, but somebody famous said it. It's really two sides of the same coin.
Rudyard Kipling.
Rudyard Kipling from the poem "If," I believe.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. So if you realize that, like, failure and success, I mean, what is that? It's if you ever saw that movie by Woody Allen, Match Point, it's just which way the ball bounces, you know. But you still have to, from an Eastern point of view, and let's say if you go into Eastern philosophy or Hinduism, that clearly says the result of your action does not belong to you because there's too many variables. But all you control is your effort and your sincerity and your integrity, right? So that hopefully leads to enough good karmic goodwill and currency out there, right? But still, it's still not guaranteed.
All right. You know, this is probably going to get us all flamed for me asking this question, but I'm going to do it anyway because I think it's an important question to this. Do you think women or other minorities suffer from imposter syndrome more so than men? Because when I read that list, like,
there was a lot of women.
How could Sheryl Sandberg, and I go, she's the chief operating officer of Facebook. Like, how could she suffer? Like, I just go, Serena Williams, Natalie Portman, like, these are people that have truly reached a pinnacle. And so I wonder, do women suffer from this more? And that and I would, posit that, does our environment that we are in have more influence over whether or not we might have that self-doubt?
I'll go first, Ravi, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
That's a really fucking interesting question, man. My immediate reaction is,
you're welcome.
Yeah, right? I fucking missed you, dude. My immediate scientific reaction to that is I would hypothesize that women would report a higher rate of imposter syndrome because, if nothing else, they bear the burden of being mothers and temperamentally what that entails. Listen, man, we've been around women that have kids. That is a very high degree of chaos for a very long time.
And that's just one arm of their chaos. They're still also dealing with a personal relationship and a business relationship all at the same time.
Right. So what I'm trying to do is reduce it down to a core that's inescapable biologically. Whether you choose to have kids or not, I'm not judging. What I'm talking about is the biological imperative to be motherly temperamentally. And so if nothing else, there's that friction that's present there. And I've seen what that costs. and it's high, right? Man, that's a fucking good question, dude. I would have to guess that there's a reason why there was more women on that list than men, and I bet it's because of their temperament. Now, you can ask, can women withstand a higher degree of chaos, as we construe that variably, than men? And I think that becomes highly variable depending on the field.
That's a good point. That's I think, Dan, you're onto something. I believe that earlier in my career, I had clients that were women in construction, which was rare. And you know, in those days, talking about the early 90s, where women were not necessarily working for general contractors, but they were working on the owner side or the architectural side or owner's reps. I found the women clients to be incredibly smart, and they had emotional intelligence. And the thing I loved was that everything was not about ego. And construction is a business that's largely, especially growing up in the industry, driven by ego. And I've seen ego destroy companies. I've seen it destroy projects. I've seen it put developers on the edge of failure. And I think that that's a tremendous sort of, I think, asset, at least something I've observed, that the humility that that women have had in business, that they have that self-reflection. You know, they say, okay, I'm not, so maybe they're more honest about it.
I'm not, I mean, I honestly don't know the answer, but I tend to say they likely do, in terms of suffering from imposter syndrome. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Because I personally believe that you can take that and make it extremely powerful. Mm-hmm. Which gets into the aspect of, you know, martial arts. Like, the stronger you come at me, I can redirect that, and the power, you know, is exponential, and as it reflects.
It's a very Tai Chi principle.
Yeah, very much so. And you know, and I've noticed that men in general do very good with single focused tasks, and there might be many single focused tasks. We just become good at getting through them very, very quickly. But the women that I've been around, they truly can be doing much more multitasking than what we can as men. And I wonder, is it in general, are women more like that jacks of all trades, master of none, because they never are able, because of all of these competing things going on and the constant self-doubt? Is that why they don't get there? And when they do, like a Serena Williams or a Sheryl Sandberg, they're going, but I've got all these other things that are taking me away from this thing that I'm good at, and therefore they never believe they're that good because they've got all these other competing interests.